Namaste and in la catch, and welcome to this episode of One World in a New World. I'm your host, Zen Benefiel, and this week's guest is Amy Olmedo. She is an amazing woman. She's an author of White Heron, a creation story. She's building a retreat in the woods. She's had multiple opportunities to leave the planet that she avoided, which are really going to be interesting to discuss, and follow her journey into shamanism. So stick around. I've known Amy for a couple of years or several years as part of the Friendship Bench and Biz Catalyst 360 as an author, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy this conversation. So stick around. We'll be right back.
Explore the thoughtless-sphere. Embark on a life-changing journey of self-discovery. Embrace harmony with self, with others, with Earth. One world in a new world. Zen Benefiel skillfully ignites conversations, guiding guests to reveal personal journeys and perspectives. Listeners are inspired to seek knowledge and find wisdom in their own lives. Join this transformative journey as we navigate the depth of human experience.
Amy, it's so great to have you here. I've been looking forward to this conversation. I really enjoyed our little gatherings that we've had over the years with the Friendship Bench, and I want to dive deeper. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I've known you for 3 years, because I got a little message saying that I had been on the bench for 3 years. So I guess that's when we met.
Yeah.
And I think we have a lot of things in common, which maybe the rest of the world may or may not have in common. So it'll be interesting to find out more.
Yeah, we're of the weird elk, and I appreciate that. Absolutely. Speaking of the weird ilk could be an elk. We'll see if we grow any antlers, right? Um, so in these conversations that I have with others like you and thought leaders around the world, we talk about the inner and outer experiences and focusing on the awareness that we're really bereft of having those inner conversations with others for fear that we'll be rejected in some way and not be able to fully express ourselves authentically. And that's really a shame. Now, since COVID took place, a lot of the listening has shifted and people are curious, they're asking questions and are diving deeper. So in that deep dive, I'd like to ask you, how did you first become aware that there was more to this life than just the physicality and that other things are involved and there's a sense of interconnectedness in that?
I've actually always known that. But like you said, you keep it a secret. When I was young, I had a lot of different experiences that led me to believe that there was more than what we were learning.
Mm-hmm.
But when you communicate it to other people, they just look at you like, okay, you're super weird.
Right.
And so,
Well, and you think it's normal too, right? Because you're
right,
having
as a
you
little
figure
kid, you
everybody else
think
is
it's
having it
normal.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, as a little kid, when you experience something or see something or say something or feel something, you could think, oh, everybody else does this, but then when you say it to everybody else, they just look at you like you have like three heads or something.
Oh, absolutely. I kept quiet till I was a teenager, as you probably did too. And then once you start opening your mouth, people go, "Whoa, wait a minute, he's weird," right? Even when you're, really um, interconnected with the people around you, your friends, your classmates, and um, they know you well, but they don't know you well.
Exactly. And I've always had a way of, um, I've tried to actually perfect the art of sounding very neutral.
Hmm.
Like for world events or politics or people, doing things, my family is split on both sides of everything. I mean, and they're not like a little bit split. They're like one's way over here and the other one's way over there. So I always had my own way of expressing agreement with certain parts of what they were saying. So they automatically thought I agreed with everything that they were saying. because I
Sure.
agreed with certain parts, even though I rejected certain parts. I just didn't necessarily bring that into the conversation.
Yeah. You acknowledge the commonality rather than the differences.
Right, which is how I view wisdom,
Hmm.
which is what has brought me here, is I had this knowledge and I had this wisdom, and I had a lot of education, I had a lot of life experiences, but I could only share certain parts of myself with certain people. Like maybe group A knew this part of Amy, and group B knew this part of Amy, and group C knew this part of Amy. And I was being authentic. I was being authentically Amy. I just showed different versions of myself to these people because I felt like if I showed, oh, here's all of Amy, like you said, I was going to get rejected.
Hmm.
Like like I played sports, so when I played sports I was 100% being Amy, but when you talk about sports and that you had some type of spiritual enlightenment, they're like, where's the ball, like
Right. Right, right. Well, and
or
that's the confusing thing about this early adulthood and the teenage experience when you're having these things happen to you and there are those around you that you do, you travel many social circles, right? And in high
Mhm.
school, especially, there's all these different cliques and that because of, I'm guessing, did you find that in your neutral place that you were able to transcend the differences and kind of not necessarily waltz through, but dance through the different social circles?
I did. I had a lot of different friends in very different social circles my whole life. And it wasn't till I was in my 40s where I'm like, whatever, I'm just going to get all these people together. And actually, when I was 45 years old, I had a birthday party and I thought I must have been crazy or something because I invited all different types of friends from different social circles to the same party. And I thought, good God, help me. And so I set up my house so that people had to walk around, they had to meet each other, they had to talk. Like I had some artisan pizza outside, out way out in the thing. So if you wanted to order your pizza, you went out there. And then I had like cool beer brewing things in another portion on my porch. And then I had appetizers in the kitchen, and I had wine and cheese in the dining room. And I had all, so if you wanted to eat different things or drink different things, you had to speak to other people. And it
Right,
was cool because people are like, oh, who are you? Oh, I've heard your name before. Oh, she really likes you. You're cool. You're friends for a long time.
right.
And it was,
The fact that you invited them there gave them at least a point of reference of which they could all feel common with and grateful toward, as well as caring, right? Because these are friends
yeah,
that obviously care about and they care about you.
yeah. And
Did you
what,
find that
oh,
in doing that, and I'm fascinated by that, I love to do this kind of stuff too, is like grab a bunch of people from different um, arenas and I found my work with partnering and construction projects doing that as well, because there's different ethnicities involved that bring in different cultural value systems that you have to navigate,
right.
at least be aware of.
Hmm.
Did you find that, um, how did you find that? Were they able to, as a result, were you able to open up a bit more in your circles than you had before?
Well, what I found, well, so number one, I grew up in Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C.
Hmm.
So experiencing different cultures is just your way of life. That's just the way it is.
Sure.
And and I've learned that when you move out of those areas, that's not the way that it is. And so I think being around a diversity of people and cultures and religions and foods, I think that's normal. And when you put me in a a very uh, in a culture where there's one type of people and one type of food and one
Small
type of
town, but
music.
with nothing but white people.
I'm
that's
like,
where I grew up.
I'm
And
like, please stop boring me to death. I can't handle it. Like,
I couldn't wait to leave, and I couldn't figure out how until it happened, and I was able to. And wow,
Yeah,
what a freedom, right? Because that in
it
those kind
is.
of small environments, there are small minds, and they don't look at those intrinsic values in having a diverse experience or diverse friends, right?
Well, and that's one thing that I've learned. So I bought a 10-acre reforested farm pretty much in the middle of nowhere. And I thought, what in the hell am I doing? I'm from the suburbs. I've lived in the city. I love, but I love hiking. I love nature. I love all of these things. And, buying 10 acres of land in the middle of the city is just not going to happen. I just don't
Mm-mm.
happen to have an extra $10 million laying around.
Sure.
And, and so I bought it out there. And as I tell people my purpose, and as people see who I am and the work that I'm putting into my land, I've already created almost 2 miles of nature trails by hand.
Mm.
And these people come out and they see what I'm doing, and I ask a lot of questions. So the commonalities I see between different groups of people of their socioeconomic status, their culture, their religions, I ask everybody, what do you think? I'm building this bridge. What do you think? What do you think? And what do you think? So by the time I get 4 or 5 supposedly expert opinions, I have a really great way to bring it all together and drive the project forward
Hmm.
because everybody has valuable input, but the type of wood you're using, who cuts the wood, when you put the wood up, what kind of screws you use, what kind of drainage you have underneath. All of those things are all super important to building a bridge. And that bridge
Oh,
has been a
absolutely.
it's been a huge metaphor because it's in the middle. So I have two types of land out there. I have sort of a loblolly pine forest with some other trees in there, and then I have a forested wetland that has all kinds of really cool stuff in there. And so they're different. So I can't even ask the same questions to the same people. And most people's response is, "Oh, cut it down." And I'm like, "Yeah, right, I'm not cutting it down. I bought this on purpose, like,
Right.
but when you really
And you mentioned that. That's just the oddest thing that you hear because we don't, you and I do, but a lot of people don't think about, well, why are you doing this? And what's the effect going to be? And are you removing things in the way of your ego, or are you just not understanding what nature is really all about?
Right. And I have hiked through nature. I used to hike 20 or 30 miles a week before my third car accident.
Mm.
And so now I don't do that anymore, but I'm working my way back to it. So I love nature. I've observed nature, and I've been through all through Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia. I've been all through the South, Georgia, North Carolina, Alabama, Tennessee, and then I went all through Hawaii, different parts of Hawaii and Texas. So I've observed a lot of really cool stuff in nature and the
Hmm.
ways different people do things. And there are some indigenous practices that are amazing, and there's some modern practices that are amazing. And so if I combine both forms of knowledge, I feel like I'm going to optimize what I'm doing. Have I ever done this before? Absolutely not. But when I'm out there, I listen to my heart, and I also listen to nature. If I'm like, should I go this way or should I go that way? There's always some type of little creature that shows up that says that way. I don't
Right,
know what it
right,
is.
right.
I don't know why. There's like there's this hawk that
Well, you
flies over
do.
my
Right.
property all the
I would
time.
beg to differ. You do know why. And you mentioned your accidents. You've been through several. You've passed so close to death on several occasions that you could reach out and touch it.
I should have
How?
died 5 times.
Okay, even
Yes.
more, right? So
Yeah.
this makes it even more imperative. Why do you think you were spared?
I still have a lot of work I need to do in the world. I've always known I wanted to be a healer, and mistakenly, when I was young, I thought I wanted to be a doctor. And then I found out that doctors are all about unhealth. And
Yeah,
I
symptom
was,
management.
yes, they manage your unhealth quite well.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I actually, in the past year, I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And I've spent over $20,000. And I've been to a million different types of specialists. I've had every kind of test you can imagine. And their conclusion is that they don't know what's wrong with me.
Hmm.
And this has nothing to do with a car accident or a respiratory illness or any of these other things.
But
This is all.
what are those symptoms for management then? What if you don't
Mhm.
mind me, I
No, go
understand it's
ahead.
some vulnerable territory here. And I hope you trust me to take you there.
Yeah.
Um, when you peel back the layers, what are the symptoms that you're experiencing?
All of my joints swell up as if I've sprained them. So sometimes they're big, sometimes they're small, but the pain and the swelling never leaves my joints. It might
Hmm.
be in my knees, it might be in my feet, it might be in my hands or my neck or my back. So it doesn't actually leave. And every doctor that I've gone to, so I'll be 54 in a couple of weeks, and every doctor that I have gone to said, "Oh, you're perfectly happy. There's no need for any more follow-up. You're just old and you're going to have to get used to this."
Yeah,
And I
well,
have some
happy
choice
birthday
words.
to you a little
I have
early.
some choice
Um,
words for those
well,
people.
yeah. And now, do
Yeah.
you mind if we dive a little deeper? Why do you think on an because I know maybe before we go into this, let's talk about how you got, I don't want to say diverted, you got nudged into exploring the inner world of shamanism for a time.
Mm-hmm.
Really went
Yeah.
to some deep places. What did it teach you? What did you learn?
Well, um, and it's not that I didn't know these things, but it helps put words to what you
Hmm?
think you know.
Yeah, there's certain
What,
base knowledge I think we all have. We just don't know how to articulate it.
right. So throughout my I've had two car accidents. The third accident I was actually hit by a car while I was walking, and then I had a respiratory illness, and then I had COVID. Um, and I've lived through all of this. And the reason I lived through all of it was because I've always been determined to be a very happy and healthy person.
Hmm.
So when you experience adversity, you experience the physical adversity, and then you experience the emotional adversity. And the emotional adversity always goes to the weakest part of your body, and that's the poison. So without
Which
being
could be in the bursal sacs.
right, so without getting into any type of political or health discussion, in 2000, the end of 2018, I was forced to ingest poison. And subsequently, I was sick for 18 months. It felt like I
Mm.
had pneumonia. And I was blamed for being sick from my former employer. So I I was forced to take the poison. Then I was blamed for the effects of the poison. And and then I left my job. And then about 3 or 4 months after I left my job is when COVID shut down the world.
Hmm.
And I literally thought, like, okay, God, did you really have to shut down the world in order to make me leave Maryland? I was like, I know I'm a little bit stubborn, but this is over the top.
maybe others were in that place too. And yeah, that was a wake-up call for sure. You know, the sequestration and the capability of self-examination for many at that time was ever present, and some did, right? I'm sure
Right.
you're one of them, obviously. Now,
Yeah.
in that, um, back into the journey into shamanism, the
Mm-hmm.
the learning that took place there, did that give you a bit more understanding of how this energy works within you?
Yeah, so I actually went to Peru so that I could experience the art of shamanism
Hmm?
where where it originated. So my shaman was in practice since he was 12 years old and he was in his 70s when I worked with him. And he had a long lineage of that. His family had lived in Peru for I think 4 or 5 generations. And one member of his family always went into Catholicism, and the other member of his family, at the right age, went into shamanism, so that their family was continuously blended. So I didn't feel like I was somehow turning my back on. I mean, I grew up Catholic. My children went to Catholic school. I wasn't turning my back on it. I was broadening my perspective on what I think spirituality is. And I
Sure.
think that there are amazing lessons in Christianity, but there's also amazing lessons in every other religion because of the commonalities that I spoke of a little while ago.
Hmm.
And so originally, I just thought I had a really cool imagination. When I was in ceremony, I was like, wow, my imagination rocks. This is so cool. Like, I wish I could tell people this stuff, but if I tell people this stuff, they just think I'm really strange anyway. So, whatever. I'm just going to keep it to myself. I mean, I told a couple of my friends and they were like, oh,
Hmm.
that's nice, Aim, you know, and
Yeah, what are they going to
then,
say? I know, for me, I had the same experience that I started pre-med program in college. Then I realized, between first and second quarter, nah, I was distraught and uh, just distraught. And I hit my knees, prayed to know what truth was willing to die for it, and the following week did. And then
Mhm.
realized, oh, we're all, and what I gave up my life in the belief of, because the question I was asked was, are you willing to die for what you believe in? Right. So that gets you to question, okay, what do I believe in? My first thought was Christ consciousness, and it was a little empty, and I didn't question it. I just moved on. And then the second one was cosmic consciousness. Well, and I said yes, because it felt full. And I didn't understand why at the time. Turns out, well, that we are cosmic consciousness condensed into form and fully manifested. That is Christ consciousness,
Yes, it is.
right?
Absolutely.
So, but we got to understand the formless and the form, right? And the
Hmm.
differentiation between the two. And in the shamanistic realms, there's more worlds than we can even imagine that we're introduced to.
Hmm.
Most people, it's like a fantasy world, like your imagination, right?
Yeah.
And yet there is this interaction, and once you have it, you begin noticing the subtleties of that continued interaction in your life. Do you notice that?
Yes. And to back up a little bit, when I found out it wasn't my imagination, when 5 of the 12 people in the room saw and experienced exactly what I experienced, I thought, okay, this is my imagination, please butt out. But I thought, this can't
Yeah, it's
be
my
my
imagination.
imagination.
Leave it
Yeah,
alone.
I'm like, hello,
This is
you're
my,
trespassing on my imagination.
yeah. I don't want to pass the ball. Let me shoot.
Yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh, if all these other people saw exactly what I saw and experienced exactly well, maybe not exactly, but to an extent.
Close enough in their own descriptions. We've all got different words for describing the same thing.
Yeah, but I saw my shaman's spirits. I saw 3 of his spirits that taught him when he was a child, and I saw them, and I simply thought it was my imagination. And then 4 other people described these exact same entities in the exact same locations, wearing these same garments. And I kept it to myself. And about 3 weeks later, I asked another woman in the group, were you sitting over by the bathroom? And she smiled at me and she said, no, I was not. And I was like, so you weren't sitting by the bathroom with a shawl on you? No, I was not. That's Teo's grandmother. And I thought, oh, okay then. All right. And she said she passed away when he was a child. Um, but she came to the ceremony to help me. And that right there completely shifted my, oh, this must be my imagination, to know this is real. This is real. And in my
Which launches a
interpretation,
whole nother set of questions.
yes. Yeah. And so each and every time so for the next 7 years, I worked with the same group of people and the same shaman. And he led us and he guided us like, this is what you need to learn. This is what you need to focus on. And it wasn't like a textbook. It wasn't like, here's ABCD. It
Hmm.
was like, before ceremony and after ceremony, we would speak about things and you could ask questions. And sometimes it was difficult to understand him because he spoke Quechua, he spoke Spanish, and he spoke English. And all of those languages don't necessarily translate the same way. And he had a
Very
pretty
true.
thick accent. So a lot of it was open to my own interpretation, which was my work. It was my work to figure these things out.
Hmm.
And how I interpret something and my work doesn't necessarily match the next person or the next
Well,
person.
that's the thing about cosmic consciousness and our connectedness to it. It is infinite intelligence, basically, specific to us
Yeah,
individually. And
yeah,
so that congruence, that stream of consciousness is available when we're open and in inquiry, then it shares what's understandable to us in that moment. It doesn't mean we understand all of it. And yet,
right.
have you noticed that over the time that passes beyond that, that there's elements of it that come back into your consciousness for a moment with another little nugget?
Yeah, so like for example, I watched him. There was a woman who had fallen out of a burning building and she was totally crushed.
Hmm.
So in this other realm, I watched him open her up, do whatever he did with a room full of spirits, and sew her back together again. But the it wasn't real thread, it was just like this glowing white light. And I watched it. And did that correlate to my life? Yeah, it did. I worked in a hospital, so it made complete sense to me. If I would have worked somewhere else, maybe I would have described it another way.
Mhm.
Um,
That's kind of evidence of the psychic surgeons we've heard about in the Philippines that have been doing this stuff for a long time.
yeah. So, a few years ago, when I felt like I didn't actually fall out of a burning building. I felt like I had been pushed out of a burning building by
Sure.
3 people I really trusted. It was like a metaphor, and I felt wounded. And I thought, well, how can I perform that own surgery on myself? And how can I look at myself? Because that was one thing he taught us to do, is when we walk back and forth in our timelines, look to see which part of the body is weak or small or mutated.
Hmm.
So I did part of the ceremony by myself. And so I went and stood in front of the mirror and I was like, okay, I was like, hey, look, my arm is not the right way. And hey, this isn't the right way. And all right, I'm like, am I doing this the right way? I have no clue.
Don't know what
So,
I'm doing, but I'm going to do it anyway.
right, I was like, I have no clue what I'm doing. So I went back out and I laid on the sofa and I meditated myself I envisioned the sofa to be a surgery table. I know what they look like. I know what's around them. I worked in a simulation center in the hospital, so all of my surgeries were simulated anyway. I was like, hey, one more simulation. Way to go. And I
Well,
felt
there are those
something.
that say, we live in a simulation. And, Tom Campbell's a big proponent of that, and that our avatars have ultimate power. The Vedas, you've heard me mention this on the bench before, that the Vedas, that 15,000 years old, and the essence of them say we're all divine threads incarnate, if you will,
Mhm.
connected to source and capable of God consciousness. Now, what's that
Mhm.
really mean? Right? We're capable of everything that we need to do for ourselves, including create the reality we want and to be able to heal ourselves.
And that is where the white heron came from, because through the 2.5 years where I was healing in essential solitude, not total
Hmm.
solitude. I do live in the world. But I had as much solitude as I could possibly have. And I hiked down to the river every day and I found fossils that were over 30 million years old every day by myself. And I didn't tell anybody where they were. And I came home and I tried to identify them. And I did all these cool things. And I thought, you know what? There isn't anything wrong with me. Because
Mm-mm.
I felt like that little girl. I felt like that little girl that was so like that was super smart. And I'm not being arrogant, like, but I was. I was like really smart and I
And
was
facts are
music.
facts, right? There
Yeah.
are super smart people. That doesn't mean that we always um, appear that way.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, but it took me back to that little girl that I was, filled with curiosity, not knowing, not knowing that, like you said, like as little kids, we think everybody's like this. So
I
in
think that's why
academics,
Jesus said, "Be ye as little children," right? There's no
yeah.
distinction there. The naivety of and innocence of a child knows no boundaries and has no fear.
Hmm. And when I was down at, ironically, at the Cape Fear River, it's appropriately named,
Yeah, nice
it is a
segue there, huh?
it is a treacherous river. If you get caught down there during when the tide's coming in, you will lose your life. Like
Hmm.
the sound of the tide changes and the white herons are there. And the white heron was guiding me. Like whenever I would be like, oh, and I'd be so frustrated, like I want to quit, I want to walk away, I just want to go back and be a normal person and get a normal job and have a normal life. And it
Like
was
that's
like,
gonna happen.
yeah. Thanks for the vote of confidence,
Well, I know, we're both the same. We find ways to integrate and be functional and have the things that we need, but we're not slaves to the system any
Zen.
longer.
Mm-mm. No, and one thing that concerned me was that when I bought my farm, it's about a half an hour out. So while I'm still in the Cape Fear region, I'm not on the river anymore. So right now where I am, I'm kind of where the river and the ocean come together. So there's all kinds
Mhm.
of birds and tides and sounds and smells. And out there, it's totally different. And that's when I mentioned the hawk came. And
Mm.
there's these hawks that live right behind where my house is being built. And there's these like I saw these cool little green snakes that are just a few inches long. And there's all kinds of like lizards and bird, like just everything you can imagine. And I'm out there, working my butt off. Oh, and the bugs,
Right.
lots of bugs.
Yep.
Um, and but they're all like saying pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. And then I was speaking to another person, that another teacher that I've met, because I feel like I exhausted all of my learning with my previous shaman. I worked with him for 7 years and I felt like my time was done. And in the last few years, I've been in search of my next teacher.
Mm.
And I found my next teacher, and one of the first things that he said to me was that I had a hawk sitting on my head. And I thought, he doesn't know about the hawk at my house. He doesn't know about any of these things. And everywhere I
One would
go,
presume that, and yet when you enter those worlds, there's nothing hidden.
yeah, when you connect with people that know, not only know how to experience, live in those experiences,
Hmm.
it's like you feel things from them and you see things from them, and you don't know. I mean, when you're sitting there speaking to somebody and you just have idle chit chat, you don't know who they are or what their life experiences are. But I didn't have a name for whatever this thing is, but it's like, I guess probably the easiest, most watered down way to explain it would be my intuition. And so my intuition, my hawk, pays attention to everything all the time, hears everything. I don't even have very good hearing from my car accidents. I can't see very well. I can't hear very well, but I hear things that don't necessarily other people don't hear, and I see
Well,
things that other people don't necessarily see, and the hawk is what helps me.
that's awesome. And when we do have adversities that diminish some of our senses, it activates others. And if we don't have that, we generally don't find the path to that multi-sensory device known as our body that has
Right.
all kinds of ways of absorbing information and relating it back to us in order for us to be more interconnected with it. How did you find in this movement as you're speaking about the energy, the flow, being able to heal yourself, being able to see yourself in that condition where the healing's necessary, first of all. And so you're looking to find out why your bursal sacs are awry, right? Right. Well, ultimately, because you're joy smelling it. So
Right.
in these times, and this is a curious question because I'm experiencing some things that I don't normally experience. When we've had a lot of these 5D people, right, that say, "Oh, we're having a dimensional shift." I, I I don't see the Earth going to be, splitting and becoming another world. No, that's not happening. Although there are dimensional vibrational shifts,
Mhm.
subtle, that can be felt by some. And I turned out to be one of those. Now, recently, there's another shift that's taking place that may be partially due because we're conduits, right?
Mhm.
We're sensitive in different ways, and yet we all are sensitive to the same things, the same energy, the one in each of us that expresses differently, right, in our individuation. So I've been experiencing this pressure in between my solar plexus and my heart. And it ebbs and flows depending on how I'm able to understand and respond to the energy in the moment that feels constrained or conflicted, that love fear balance and dance, right?
Mhm.
And I know that I'm highly sensitive to much larger than my own personal energy, as I've found that out over 40 years of experiences questioning, am I really? Am I crazy? I can't question, it's hard to deny your own personal direct experience
Right.
and how you interpret that. And if you're wrong and you keep asking about it, well, the correct interpretation is eventually going to come forth and you're going to feel it resonate in your body when it happens. Do you find that to be true?
Yeah, absolutely. I forgot to mention that I was a delicate flower.
Well, at least you're not deflowered, right?
since I am such a delicate flower, I do
Right.
experience all different types of energies, and I always have. I mean, I feel light, I feel dark, I feel anger, I feel happy, I feel all different types of things from people, and I have to consciously try to cut some of those things off if I
Sure.
feel that they're burdening me. I mean,
Well, this is where I'm
obviously,
going to.
yeah, obviously, if I love the person and I feel that they have a certain feeling, I'm not going to cut them off. But, the person at the restaurant or the person walking down the street or some random person, calling out for help, I can't help everybody in the world that needs help. Number
Sure.
one, I don't have the wherewithal to do that. And number two, there's a lot of people who don't want to help themselves. And
Mhm.
if people want to help themselves, I'm more than happy to help show them the way, but it's not my responsibility to heal them.
Right. Right. And
And
the
yeah.
thing is, it seems anyway, where your attention is attracted to, right? And this is a natural
Mhm.
process. Sometimes we don't even have control. It just all of a sudden, it's like walking into a room and meeting someone's eyes. You don't have control of that. That's energy, and that's a connection between the two of you.
Absolutely.
Right? So in that understanding, is it possible that there is somewhere that there is a, and I'm asking this because I'm asking myself too,
Hmm.
is there something I'm missing? Am I resisting something or not clear on something where I'm diminishing the flow that's capable through me as a being that's conscious and aware of that? Now,
Well, I would say for me, to answer that question for myself, I have I have some anger that I haven't reconciled in my life, which
mm,
is most likely, in my opinion, why I feel the majority of my pain in my knees and my hands. And
makes sense, doesn't it?
I, yeah, it does. And I'm trying to reconcile that anger, but it's like I said, when the people that you love and trust most in your life, when those are the people who hurt you, the pain doesn't go away easily. I mean, if
Well,
some
I'm hip.
coworker hurts you or somebody you just casually know, if they hurt you, it might make you upset for a few days or whatever.
Yeah.
But when people that you've known since you came into this world
Or your
completely,
spouse.
yeah, well, no, I haven't been married for quite some time and my boyfriend's awesome. So, but no, there's other people in my life that I have known for either my entire life or their entire life that have completely hurt me. And you just don't get over it like today or tomorrow. It takes time if you even can get over it altogether.
That's one belief. I happen to
Hmm.
feel that getting over can happen in an instant. You just have to choose to let it go. And that's a tough thing to do because it's so embedded and present and familiar, right?
Right. And it's emotional energy.
Well, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Now, if you could let it go, would you?
Most of those people, most.
No, I mean just the energy,
Yeah.
the constraint of energy that it brings into your body. Could you let go of that?
I think
Use your
so.
imagination.
Right. It's my
Yeah.
imagination.
Exactly. All right. So
Right.
let's put your imagination to work. If you could let go of that, would you?
Um, yes, I would let go of the emotional energy that makes my knees and my hands hurt.
Okay. And if you could do it in a breath, would that sound outlandish or impossible?
No, I don't think that would be impossible.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
just, curious. Might try that.
So you
Uh,
want my take on you?
well, there's one other. Yes, I would love
Okay.
that, and
Okay.
because I love these generative conversation, I'm totally open for that.
Okay.
The other thing, And I think you were present on the bench when I did the exercise, the love and oneness exercise, I think I called it, where you write all the people's names down of who you have issues with, and
Hmm.
you go through each one of them and you pick the name, close your eyes, look into their eyes, and say to them, I love you, and mean it. Our purpose is oneness, and
Hmm.
mean it. Now, that's a convenient and simple way to do that. And it worked wonders for me when I was first introduced to it, because I'd just gone through a divorce with a wife who'd had affairs, and I was very angry at that. And especially all the uh, eyes that were upon me for lies and deceit that was told to others, right,
Right.
to cover up. So, and still today that's happening. And so, the lingering effect, right? When you talk about it, I can feel there's still a little bit charged there that I haven't quite let go yet. Um,
Yeah.
and that's just because it's there, right? You go, when you start talking about the energy, that brings it up because your attention's there. Now, how
Mhm.
much of it brings up depends on your ability just to observe it and report on it, as opposed to well or to waller in it.
Yeah.
So,
I think I was
that with
absent
that,
that day, and I'm sad that I was absent that day because for the past 3 years, I think I've been to almost all of them, but I was not there that
yeah.
day.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
now you got it. That's the simple one. And it is pretty simple to do. It just takes discipline and effort and a willingness to try it. What do you got to lose? Right?
Right.
So, you wanted to have a reflection on what I was going through?
So, um, I don't know about in the beginning when I met you, but I could say for at least the past year, I don't have an exact timeline. You have uh, for lack of a better word, a string, and the string is right here at your solar plexus, and it's pulling your eyelids down.
Hmm.
And I don't know what causes your string. I don't know what makes it hold on, but I feel that if you could cut those two, those two strings, pulling your eyes down, which creates a slight bit of darkness inside of you, I feel like you would resolve your issue.
And that darkness to me is a lack of confidence, um, not allowing my full authentic self to be present, as it's been retarded. And I've been a retard for a lot of years, right?
Right. Well, that's the re part. It just goes over and over and
Right.
over again. Otherwise, you'd just be a tort.
Exactly. Yeah. And what is a tart, right? It's like, I've always wondered what the heck or where alerts are, and it's like, hey, you got to be alert. Well, what's alert, right? So, I mean, crazy questions you have when you're kids because you take things too literally. It's like, the
Hmm.
principal that substituted for my second grade teacher one day, and I was sitting in the front row, of course, last name would be, I'm there. And she's saying something, and I'm rolling my eyes. And she says, Mr. Benefiel, you show me, you roll your eyes one time, I'm going to show you the paddle. I'm like, cool, right? So I roll my eyes.
Can I engrave my name on it?
Yeah, exactly. Um, So, you got to be careful how well you listen in the English language. The literalness can be really hilarious at times and yet so uncomfortable to others that, you appear silly and foolish and things like that. And yet, my mother was an English and Lit teacher and she taught me how to do those things. So it's her fault. Um, I, I love it. right? There's language is so malleable and so easily played with that we can have fun with, and yet at the same time, it can be turned on us to manipulate us into things that we have no clue that we're being manipulated into.
Right, I agree. Yeah, some people are very charismatic and use the language to control and manipulate things in so many ways. And they're
Absolutely. And I
very
thank you.
believable. Yeah.
It's, yeah, it is. Well, it's like Howard Bloom in his book, The Lucifer Principle. And I had a short conversation with him. Didn't get it recorded because we were doing the prelim, and he ran out of time. And I was like, oh no. Any rate, the Lucifer Principle is about the scientific study of the history of how small groups and individuals manipulated masses and entire populations by telling lies and repeating them and controlling the media stream, whether it's a town cry or the internet. And we've fallen prey to that today. We don't
Oh,
question.
every single day. Every single day. It is absolutely amazing to me how fast misinformation and disinformation it spreads. I mean, it spreads like wildfire, and all wildfire does is cause destruction.
Right.
Yeah,
Can we learn
it's
from that?
can we learn? Yeah, I mean, well, some people can learn from that, but you can tell somebody the truth 100 times, but when it's already in their brain because they read it on social media, it's really hard to dispel that.
It really is. And yet it's possible and arduous and yet can be fun when you're not attached to the outcome and you're doing it just because you love doing it. Right.
Yeah, well,
You
I
know,
can give you a perfect example of something that's not threatening to anybody whatsoever. I mean, Ken is a master beekeeper and he's been doing it for 20 years. He has an
mhm.
amazing amount of knowledge about bees and beekeeping and honey and all kinds of stuff. And when I was first doing some research, just to write little sections of my book that talk about him and the bees and everything like that, I came to him and he was like, "Where did you get this information?" And I'm like, "Oh, from the internet." And he's like, "This isn't right." And I was
Mhm.
like, "Well, but I found it on like five different sources." Like I wasn't arguing with him that it was right, but I was like, how can I spend an entire day doing research about bees and beekeeping only to find out that probably half of what I quote unquote learned was wrong.
Right.
And like it wasn't hurting him, it wasn't hurting me, but if I wouldn't have known that and I would have put it in my book anyway, I would have just published something that was completely wrong.
And
and
and that's okay
and
because you
and
know any
whoever was
better, but at the
proofreading
same
it, yeah, whoever was proofreading it, editing it, they would have looked it up and gone, "Oh, that's right. Yeah, because the fact's right here, but it's not even a real fact."
right.
You
And yet
know?
it's out there now. How and this is the challenge that we have. Hopefully, AI will be able to help us out a little bit more because it doesn't have any emotions and it can get to the facts quicker. And yet, we've got to be able to point it in the right direction and understand the parameters of the kinds of algorithms, for lack of a better, to discover the truth. And even today, it's like 99%. So I've talked to hundreds of people, right? Probably 99% of them, if not greater, believe that the apocalypse means the catastrophic end of the world, right?
Right.
Doesn't mean that at all. The Greek word from which it comes means uncovering knowledge. Total opposite. Well, now it could be that uncovering the truth about things could be the catastrophic destruction of their worlds.
Yes, yes,
Right.
exactly.
And may be so soon. We don't know yet. However, there is this deep dive, and Musk's part of it. He wants the open availability of everything to be examined. The transparency. The truth will prevail through that if you're willing to look at everything with that eye and the observer. not necessarily the finger pointer, because then you got three of them coming back at you, so you better have your facts straight, right?
And I got long nails, so that could hurt.
Ooh, yeah, 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 yeah. All right. Speaking of hurting, we're like almost out of time, and this has just been so wonderful, Amy. Yeah, I really appreciate your sharings and your reflection on my strings. Right? That's cool. That's
Well, you don't
super.
go around telling people you got strings on your eye, so, but I'm glad you asked.
Well, and you had the information. I was vulnerable enough to share my what I'm experiencing, not necessarily the answers for it, and yet what I thought might be true. And then you just added to that as part of your sharing. And we talk about this and boil it down to loving and being loved,
Hmm,
right? That's the place that you share the deepest truths from. That connection,
exactly.
that interconnectedness. And when you're willing to be there, others can see it and reflect from that place. Because what? Why? I am another you, just as you are another me. That's my opening in La Catch. It's a Mayan phrase, right? And
Right.
we don't understand that because we're too individuated and competitive still. And that's okay. And yet, in order for us all to get along and work together as a society, as a planetary civilization, we've got to move past that. We've got to collaborate. How do you see
So,
that happening? Because I know you
mm,
keep an eye on things.
I I think that at least in the United States, I can't speak for other countries. We are so far apart. And that was the plan. The plan was to take us apart. It took away our families, it took away our friends, it took away our communities, and pushed us in complete opposite directions.
Mhm.
And in order for that healing to take place, there is going to have to be a lot of truth spoken, but it's going to take a long time for any amount of truth, one way or the other, to prevail because of how much untruth has been spoken or
Mhm.
one-sided truth. And it honestly makes me really sad because I feel like when I was younger, so that would be like the 70s and the 80s. I could be wrong, but I feel like, or maybe it was just simply my location. I feel like we were closer to that. I feel like if even if you had opposing views, at the end of the day, you were still friends. And
Right.
now today, I feel like if you have opposing views, you're like complete enemies. And
Different
that,
set of boundaries, right?
yeah, and it's sad. It's sad what all of this turmoil has done to all of us. And I honestly have no idea what it's going to take, but I'm hoping that I can at least affect a few people, the people who encounter me, my book, my retreat. I hope that I will be able to help them reconcile whatever their differences are, whatever their ailments are, whatever kind of adversity they've gone through, so that they can find peace within themselves and progress into the person that they're meant to be.
That's perfect. And it is an individual effort. The collective will change because the individuals have.
Yes, I believe that.
It happens no other way. You've got to love yourself first before you can love another.
Yeah, my next book is actually, it's called Alexander, and it's all about how you fall in love and stay in love with the worst parts of yourself, which ultimately progress your reason for being here.
That's that is a wonderful gift to end our conversation with.
Thank you.
Oh, Amy, thank you so much for being a part of our apocalyptic chats.
It's
I
not
s
the end of the world, Zen.
No, no, I'm not going to cut those strings, right? I'm going to cut those strings so I'm no longer tethered. Thank you again, Amy.
Thank
And
you.
Namaste and in la catch, and thanks for sticking with us for this episode of One World in a New World. I'm your host, Zen Benefiel, and our guest has been Amy Olmedo, and I will see you next time.